today's world, the concept of justice has never been simple. Justice is not just about courtroom decisions. It's about the quiet, unseen battles fought behind closed doors, battles that test one's resilience, courage, and determination. The people who fight for justice, whether they are judges or ordinary citizens, face terrifying challenges. But it is in these very trials that their true strength and character emerge. The story we are about to explore begins with an ordinary woman who, despite all odds, rises to become an extraordinary symbol of strength. A woman whose fight for justice is fueled not just by the desire to make the world better, but by the profound pain of losing a loved one. What she endured might make anyone's blood run cold, but it is precisely these brutal experiences that will shape her into someone who refuses to bow down. We're going to witness the journey of Elsie, a black woman who was once just a law student, dreaming of making a difference in the legal world, until she found herself face to face with corruption and abuse that would change her life forever. Elsie's story is not just about one woman seeking vengeance. It's about a relentless pursuit of truth and justice against a system designed to keep the oppressed silent. One fateful day, Elsie finds herself incarcerated, the victim of a corrupt system. However, the true shock comes when two white police officers, who've been charged with assaulting black female inmates, are called into the very courtroom where Elsie now sits as the judge. This is where things take a chilling turn. The smug guards, who have long been above the law, are stunned when they realize who they are facing. But how did Elsie, once a student with big dreams, end up sitting on the other side of the bench? How did she become a powerful judge who would finally expose the dark secrets of the system that had tried to crush her spirit? This is not just a tale of revenge. It's a story of resilience, determination, and how one person's fight for justice can shake the very foundation of the system meant to protect it. It's a story about how Elsie, a woman who had everything taken from her, not only seeks retribution but strives to tear down the walls of corruption and reveal the truth. Imagine the moment when the very people who harmed you are forced to face you, but instead of fighting back in rage, you take a deep breath and execute a long-term plan to expose their crimes. That's what Elsie did. In this video, we'll follow Elsie's transformation from an innocent law student into a formidable judge, fighting to bring justice not only for herself but for every soul wronged by the system. Her story will make us question not just the people in power, but the very system that has been designed to protect them, and what it really takes to make real change. But there's an even deeper twist that you won't see coming. Elsie, who had once been brutalized and confined within a corrupt prison, becomes a player in a dangerous game that she alone must win. And the very men who once had all the power are now being outsmarted by her. This isn't just a story of revenge. It's a story of turning the tables and taking back control. Elsie's story will show us that justice doesn't just exist in a courtroom. It's something we must fight for, even if the odds are stacked against us. And when the system fails us, it's up to us to rise above, expose the truth, and restore the faith that justice can prevail. Are you ready to learn how Elsie, once a victim, became one of the most powerful voices in the fight against corruption and abuse? Her journey will not only shock you, but will leave you with a new understanding of what true justice really means. Elsie had always been a woman driven by purpose. Even as a law student, she understood the world wasn't fair. She witnessed injustices in every corner of society: racism, corruption, abuse. But it wasn't until she lost the love of her life, Emery, that she realized the true depths of how broken the system was. Emery was the love of Elsie's life. Their bond was the kind that defied all odds, an interracial couple in a world that wasn't ready for their love. Emery, a white classmate at law school, stood by Elsie's side, supporting her every step of the way. They shared dreams of changing the world together, of fighting injustice with the law they would soon wield as weapons of truth. But fate dealt them a cruel hand. Emery was falsely accused of stealing a valuable asset. The legal system, rigged against him from the start, failed to protect him. Despite Elsie's tireless efforts to clear his name, the power of the system crushed him. He was convicted, sent to prison, and eventually died there under mysterious circumstances. Elsie was devastated, but where others might have crumbled, Elsie's grief turned into something far more powerful, a thirst for justice. The kind of justice that no one could ever take from her, no matter how corrupt or dangerous the system became. In her heartbreak, she found a new purpose. Elsie was no longer just a law student with aspirations. She became a woman on a mission, with a fire burning in her soul to uncover the truth behind Emery's death and bring the corrupt system to its knees. Her first major breakthrough came when she found a lead pointing to the very prison where Emery had been held. It was a dark, corrupt place, one that had been hiding its secrets behind high walls and iron gates. Elsie couldn't just sit back and wait for justice to come to her. She needed to act. But there was one massive obstacle standing in her way. She was no longer just a law student. She was an outsider, one the system had no intention of listening to. That's when Elsie made a daring decision. With the help of her trusted assistant, Marcus, she would infiltrate the very prison that held the answers. She fabricated a new identity, committing a minor offense in order to be sent to prison. Her plan was risky, dangerous, and could backfire at any moment. But Elsie was willing to sacrifice everything, even her own freedom, to expose the darkness she knew was lurking within those walls. Upon entering the prison, Elsie quickly realized the horrors she'd only heard about. The guards, brutal and untouchable, ruled the prison with impunity. But what struck her the most wasn't just the violence. It was the palpable fear that everyone, both the inmates and the guards, had of speaking out. The system had conditioned them to stay silent, to accept abuse and injustice as the norm. One fateful day, while tending the garden with the other inmates, Elsie witnessed a brutal scene. A black female inmate was being viciously beaten by two of the guards, Dawson and Cohen. These were the men Elsie had heard whispers about, guards known for their cruelty. She couldn't stay silent. Elsie had to speak out. With everything in her, she screamed at the guards to stop. But that act of defiance would come at a cost. The guards turned their cold eyes on Elsie, and just like that, she was targeted. She had unwittingly become their next victim. They didn't see her as a law student or a prisoner. They saw her as a threat they needed to eliminate. Elsie was dragged into a secluded room, locked in a space where no one could hear her screams. They beat her, tortured her with sleep deprivation, and taunted her. But the more they tried to break her, the stronger Elsie became. She wasn't just fighting for her own survival anymore. She was fighting for the truth to come out. She was fighting for Emery, for every inmate who'd suffered at the hands of these monsters, and for the justice that had long eluded them all. The guards, realizing that they couldn't break Elsie, resorted to new methods of torture. They locked her in a room with blaring speakers that kept her awake for days on end. The darkness of the prison and the cruelty of the guards began to wear on Elsie's body, but not on her spirit. The more they tried to break her, the more her resolve strengthened. Elsie knew that she couldn't give up, no matter how much pain she was in. Days turned into weeks, and Elsie's body grew weaker, but her mind remained sharp. She had to survive. She had to get out of here, and when she did, the truth would come to light. But just as it seemed like Elsie's plan was doomed to fail, an unexpected twist occurred. News came that she was being transferred to another facility. The guards, smug and confident, believed that they had won. But they didn't know that Elsie's fight was far from over. She wasn't being transferred. She was being rescued. Outside the prison gates, Marcus had been working tirelessly to gather the evidence needed to expose the truth. He had found someone willing to testify, one of the former inmates who had witnessed the abuse and who was willing to help Elsie. With that critical testimony, Elsie was finally freed. But the real battle was just beginning. Elsie's escape from the clutches of the prison was more than just a physical release. It marked the beginning of a much bigger battle. She wasn't simply fighting for her own freedom anymore. She was now a symbol, a beacon of hope for everyone who had ever suffered at the hands of an unjust system. But the path ahead was filled with even more peril. When Elsie walked out of that prison, bruised but not broken, she knew that her mission wasn't complete. What had happened to her wasn't an isolated incident. The system that allowed guards like Dawson and Cohen to torment inmates wasn't just broken, it was rotten from the core. She had to expose everything, every dark secret, every corrupt official who had turned a blind eye to the abuse that had been happening for years. As soon as she regained her strength, Elsie wasted no time. She filed charges against Dawson and Cohen for their brutal treatment of her and the other women. But this wasn't just about seeking justice for herself. It was about making sure that no one else would have to suffer in silence. She knew that exposing their crimes would unravel a network of corruption that had been festering for years. The courtroom was packed on the day of the trial. News of Elsie's resilience had spread far and wide. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was a force to be reckoned with. The victims of Dawson and Cohen, many of whom had been too afraid to speak out before, came forward to share their stories. Their testimonies were powerful, painting a clear picture of the cruelty and abuse that had gone unchecked for far too long. Dawson and Cohen, once smug and confident, now found themselves in the hot seat. The weight of their actions was finally catching up with them. They tried to maintain their composure, but the evidence was overwhelming. Each victim's testimony, each shred of evidence, chipped away at the walls they had built around themselves. For the first time in their careers, they were the ones who were powerless. But Elsie wasn't done yet. Her quest for justice wasn't just about punishing a few bad apples. It was about reforming the entire system. She knew that exposing Dawson and Cohen's crimes was just the tip of the iceberg. The prison system they had worked in was riddled with corruption. There were too many others like them, too many guards and officials who had been getting away with abuse for far too long. If Elsie had her way, the entire system would be reformed. No one would be above the law. So Elsie's fight continued. With the help of her trusted assistant Marcus and the evidence he had gathered, Elsie launched a sweeping investigation into the prison system. What they uncovered was nothing short of shocking. The corruption ran deep, far deeper than anyone could have imagined. There were bribed officials, rigged systems, and an endless chain of abuse that went unchecked. The investigation revealed that this wasn't just about two bad guards. This was about a broken system that allowed power to be abused at every level. As the investigation unfolded, the media caught wind of the story. Elsie became a symbol of hope not just for the women in the prison, but for anyone who had ever been victimized by an unjust system. People began to rally behind her cause. They saw in her the strength to stand up against the powerful, the courage to fight for what was right, and the resilience to never give up. The day of Dawson and Cohen's sentencing came, and the courtroom was electric with anticipation. The guards, who had once treated inmates as nothing more than animals, now faced the consequences of their actions. As Elsie stood in front of the court, her eyes locked on Dawson and Cohen, her face calm, but her heart filled with the fire of justice. It was over. They would pay for what they had done. The judge delivered a harsh sentence. Dawson and Cohen were convicted, their careers shattered, and their lives forever altered. But that was just one part of the victory. The larger impact was the ripple effect that spread through the entire prison system. Elsie's case set a precedent. It sparked reform efforts that would slowly begin to address the systemic issues that allowed abuse to thrive. It was a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. Elsie's victory wasn't just about retribution, it was about redemption. She had fought for Emery's memory, for the countless women who had suffered, and for a future where justice was no longer a distant dream. Her journey had been long, painful, and filled with obstacles, but in the end, she had emerged victorious. Not just for herself, but for everyone who had been silenced by a broken system. As Elsie walked out of the courthouse that day, she felt a sense of peace. The fight wasn't over, and there was still much work to be done, but she had won the first battle. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Elsie turned to Marcus, who had been by her side every step of the way. "We did it," she said softly, a smile breaking across her face. Marcus nodded, his eyes filled with admiration. "We sure did." Elsie stood there for a moment, taking in the sunlight. The weight of everything she had been through seemed to lift from her shoulders. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a warrior, and her fight for justice had only just begun. Reflection. Elsie's story is a testament to the power of resilience, the importance of standing up for what's right, and the ability to bring about change in the face of overwhelming odds. Through her determination and courage, Elsie didn't just expose the corruption of a few bad guards. She challenged the very system that allowed that corruption to exist in the first place. Her story serves as a powerful reminder that even in the darkest of times, justice is possible, but only if we're brave enough to fight for it. Elsie's journey is also a call to action for all of us. If we remain silent in the face of injustice, we become complicit in the system that perpetuates it. But if we rise up, if we speak out, and if we are relentless in our pursuit of justice, we can change the world. Elsie proved that, and her story is far from over. The battle for justice, equality, and accountability will continue, and Elsie will be at the forefront, leading the charge for a better, more just society. As the courtroom finally quieted down after years of suffering and corruption, Elsie's heart raced with both the weight of history and the hope of justice finally being served. The journey she had embarked on, from a broken law student to a woman who defied all odds to uncover the truth, was nothing short of extraordinary. But what really resonated in that final moment was the realization that true justice doesn't always come easily. It's a battle, a constant push against systems designed to protect the very people who would seek to destroy the vulnerable. Dawson and Cohen had been smug, self-assured in their belief that their abuse would never see the light of day. Their confidence in their position of power had blinded them to the possibility that someone, even someone they underestimated, could come back to expose them. But in that courtroom, Elsie was no longer just the victim of their oppression. She was the embodiment of justice, the very force they thought they could evade forever. But this wasn't just about their downfall. It was about something much deeper: Elsie's transformation. Her journey wasn't merely about seeking revenge for Emery's death or exposing the truth behind prison corruption. It was about her reclaiming the power that had once been stolen from her. It was about the resilience she built from years of suffering, turning pain into purpose. A story of resilience and empowerment. Elsie's story is a testament to the strength of the human spirit, and it serves as a reminder that justice isn't given, it's earned. Her journey exemplifies the harsh realities many face, especially those from marginalized communities, where the system can often feel stacked against them. Yet, what makes Elsie's story even more powerful is her refusal to remain silent. The years she spent fighting, despite feeling trapped and alone, reveal that even in the darkest places, There's always hope if one is willing to risk everything for what is right. But there's something more profound to be learned from Elsie's story. When we think of justice, we often imagine the courtroom drama, the evidence, and the gavel slamming down. However, the true weight of justice isn't found in the courtroom. It's in the actions taken outside of it. It's about the people who tirelessly fight for those who have no voice, who risk everything because they believe in what is right, no matter the odds. Elsie wasn't just seeking justice for herself or even Emery. She was fighting for every woman in that prison, every life that had been broken and silenced. The final reckoning as Elsie walked out of the courthouse, the sun shining brightly above her. There was an undeniable sense of closure. The pain of her past, losing Emery, suffering at the hands of Dawson and Cohen, being trapped in a system that constantly pushed her down, still lingered, but it no longer defined her. She had reclaimed her identity. She had not only avenged Emery's death, but had also given the women in that prison a voice. She had turned the page on a chapter of darkness and began a new one, where justice was no longer a distant dream but a reality that she had fought tooth and nail to achieve. For many, the journey towards justice is long, often filled with frustration, heartbreak, and moments of doubt. But Elsie's story teaches us that the fight is worth it. That one person's voice, no matter how quiet or seemingly powerless, can echo through the halls of power and shake the very foundations of a broken system. The ultimate message of hope and transformation. Elsie's triumph wasn't just about bringing criminals to justice. It was about finding redemption for herself, her community, and for Emery, the woman she had loved and lost. It's a message that resonates beyond just the legal system. It speaks to the power of resilience, the importance of speaking out against wrongdoings, and the undeniable truth that justice, while hard to attain, is always worth pursuing. Elsie didn't just change the lives of those around her. She transformed herself, proving that no matter how dark the road, there is always light at the end, and that light is fueled by justice, truth, and the relentless fight for what is right. As we close this chapter of Elsie's remarkable journey, let's take a moment to reflect on the deeper message of her story. It's a reminder that the fight for justice is never easy, but it's always worth it. Elsie didn't just fight for herself. She fought for every silenced voice, every broken system, and every person who has ever been made to feel powerless. Before you go, I want to ask you a question. What would you do if you were in Elsie's shoes? Would you have the courage to rise above the injustices, fight back, and uncover the truth, even if it meant risking everything? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear what you think. And if you found Elsie's story inspiring, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our future stories. Stay tuned, because we've got more incredible tales of strength, courage, and the power of justice coming your way. Thank you for watching, and remember, justice is only served when we fight for it.